This is TWiT.
You'd be very happy, I think, if we brought 10 bits, higher dynamic range, wider color to HD TV, to 1080p. That would make a far bigger difference, a far better picture than we have now, than simply adding more pixels.
Well, and I have actually been advocating that UHD should be a minimum of 8 bits. I'm sorry, minimum 10 bits. There should be no 8 bits allowed in UHD TV. That would be another thing that would make it vastly superior to what we have now today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. To give you a demonstration of how important bit depth is, we're talking about bit depth, the number of bits used to represent the dynamic range. I have a graphic called bit depth, which we can take a look at. Here it is. This is a gross exaggeration. I mean, if you had only 2 bits, you could have 4 levels of brightness, and that's shown on the left here. And you only see 4 bands of gray, and it's obvious. I mean, you couldn't really watch a picture that had only 2 bits of dynamic range. 4 bits gives you 16 levels of brightness, and that's still not enough for any kind of TV picture. We currently have 8 bits, but as you can see on the right, the more bits you have, the smoother the transition, the more levels you have, to the point where it doesn't look like a stair step anymore. It looks like a continuous ramp, what's called a ramp. And so, you know, the more bits you have, the smoother the image looks. And that's important not only in brightness dynamic range, but also in color gamut, the range of colors that can be represented, right?
Well, certainly bit depth is required to get a smooth transition between black and white. But if you look at color space, a small color space requires a few bits. But if you get a large color space, you need more bits to get there. So as much as you want to increase the dynamic range of luminance from a small number to a big number, you need more bits for that. The same is true for color. If you want to go further out in the color capability, you need to do it with more bits. If you don't have more bits, you're going to have the same kind of banding that was illustrated in the 4-bit example or a 2-bit example that you just showed. You'll have what is known as contouring or banding in the picture. So the bit depth is really necessary for both color and black and white.
Mm-hmm. And color gamut or color space is another thing we're thinking about here. And looking toward expanding. And we have another graphic I was going to show here called Gamuts. And so here we have a representation. We've seen this before on the show, but it certainly bears repeating. We've got this representation of all the visible colors, which are in this guitar pick shaped thing, where you can see where the greens are and the blues and the reds and the whites right in the middle. And then we have these 3 triangles. The smallest one is the one we use currently. It's called Rec 709. The middle one, the somewhat larger one in the middle there, is the one used in digital cinema. It's called P3. And the largest one is the one that everyone's talking about for UHD TV. It's called Rec 2020. But there are a number of reasons why that one's impractical. And so I think, Joe, what do you think? I don't think we're going to see many displays that can actually achieve Rec 2020 anytime soon, right?
Well, it's not only a case of not seeing displays that can do Rec 2020. I'm taking the position that we're going to discover that 2020 is so far out on the edge that it's not going to have the bandwidth necessary in red, green, and blue to give you the kind of fidelity where everyone will agree that the picture is the same or to their liking. So I actually think there are some problems with 2020. It's not only the color, but it's also the bandwidth of the color. And among the things that we've discovered is when each color has a bandwidth, there is much more agreement among human beings about the color of the picture. When there is a very narrow bandwidth for red, green, and blue, there is room for human beings to disagree about what they're seeing as a color. So
Right.
I actually think going out to 2020 might be a mistake in terms of universal recognition of picture quality. Granted,
And by
there will be more colors, but there will be a lot more disagreement on what we think we're seeing.